Shavua Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Bava Kamma. We are up to Perek Yud Mishnah Vav. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Ranbayev, Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Chana ben Miriam, Sason ben Ryan, Yoshua ben Shifra, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen, and Avdi ben Chaim lechaim v'derefua shenemav, Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Betoch Shah Cholei Yisrael, and Achlama Merav Binyamin, Or Tzion Chai ben Dvorah. The Mishnah begins, Zagozel et chavero, o she'lava imenu, o she'ifkid lo. If someone steals something from another or borrows money from him or had an item deposited with him for safekeeping and he wishes to return it, the law is as follows. By Yishuv, if he stole, borrowed, or received it for safekeeping in an inhabited area, lo yachzir lo bamidbar, he may not return it to the owner in a wilderness where people do not live, since it will be unsafe there. If the owner does not want to take back his item or money in an uninhabited area, because it is difficult to protect things there, the robber, borrower, or watchman cannot require him to accept it there. The owner can say, since the item came into your possession in a populated area, you are responsible for it until you return it to me in a populated area. As the Rambam writes in Erchot Sheila Pikadon, chapter 7, Halacha 11. If he did return the item in an uninhabited area against the owner's will, he remains responsible for it, and if harm befalls it, he is obligated to pay. However, if he, specifically referring to the borrower or watchman, accepted it on condition that he may go out to the wilderness to return it, he may return it to the owner in the wilderness. Meaning the borrower or watchman told the owner that he is taking the object only if he can return it in an uninhabited area, and the owner accepted this condition. The borrower or watchman can then fulfill his duty by returning it to such a place, in such a place. The Gemara on page 118a, Masechet Bava Kamma, argues that this ruling is obvious. It therefore explains the Mishnah is referring to a case where the owner gave him the money or item and told him that he was leaving for the wilderness, and the borrower or watchman replied that he too was going to the wilderness. Even though he did not explicitly say that he might return it there, he implies as much. Therefore, since the owner did not object, he may return it even in the wilderness. And that is at a Mishnah Vav. Mishnah Zayin begins, one person says to another, Gizalticha, Hilvitani, Hivkata etzli. I stole something from you, or I lent you money, or you deposited an item with me for safekeeping. And he continues, but I do not know whether I returned it to you or did not return it to you. Chayav l'shalem, he is obligated to pay, because he certainly took the item or money, whereas it is only possible that he returned it. The Mishnah's ruling applies where the claimant, the victim of the theft, lender, owner of safeguarded item, is sure that he has owed the money or the item. Only then must the defendant pay. If the claimant himself is not sure, or he makes no claim at all, the defendant is exempt. Nevertheless, he should pay in order to fulfill a more obligation, what we call, let's say, to fulfill his obligation from heaven. But if he said to him, I do not know whether I stole from you, or I do not know whether you lend me money, or I do not know whether you deposit an item with me for safekeeping, he is not obligated to pay, since in this case he might not have taken the item or money in the first place. In this case, even if the claimant is sure that the defendant took the money, whereas the defendant is unsure, the defendant is exempt, though here too he has a moral duty to pay. This is an application of the rule, the burden of proof is on the one who wants to collect property from his fellow. Since the claimant must prove his case but cannot, he has no right to collect payment. Although the defendant is under no obligation to pay, the claimant can force him to take an oath in court known as a shvuat hesed, that he in fact does not know whether he owes the money. This case is different from the previous one, where both agree that the defendant took the item or money, and the only doubt is whether he returned it. Since the defendant was definitely obligated at some point and is not known whether he ever fulfilled that obligation, he must pay even though the claimant has no proof. And that is an Abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Everybody should have a Shavua Tov. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.